Hello.
Hello.
Two warnings. I'm a crier, and sometimes I talk too long, so Pastor, if Sam needs to play a little music to give me a little hint to get me off of here, I understand. As I thought a lot about this over the last few weeks, I wanted to have a little quote or a phrase to kind of preface the things that I want to talk about quickly, and that's understanding a current connection is about understanding one's past and history. I'm a PK. My father was a pastor. I was born in Kansas in a very conservative religion, the Wesleyan Church. We moved to Wisconsin because my parents were not allowed to wear their wedding rings because that was considered earthly adornment. Collars to here, sleeves to here, skirts within 8 inches to the ankle, and the legs had to be covered. It was like Footloose on crack. It was horrible. And I don't mean it in that way, in regard to just understanding the difference of it, because I was raised in a great household, and I loved my faith. The problem was the faith didn't love me. The struggle was real. The university I went to school at, in the dean's office, had a closet. And on the door was a sign that said, in quotes, "the closet." It was filled with boxes and packing tape and envelopes of cash. That when anyone would come to a RA or someone on the campus, a spiritual leader, to talk about their struggles with their homosexual feelings, within minutes, 5 or 6 professors would be in their room with boxes and tape and have them packed up and in their car with an envelope of cash in their hand so they could go home. There was no help. You live in fear constantly. I was outed November 10th, 1990. Someone decided to call my parents at 2 in the morning and let them know who I was. I was so close within weeks to telling them, and I didn't get that opportunity. It was taken from me. Funny thing is my dad knew. Weird thing is my mom didn't, because normally moms figure that out pretty quickly. She had no clue. But I had been engaged to be married. You know, I did the whole thing that I was taught to do, that I was told to do. That was the Christian thing to do. My father knew from when I was probably in 5th or 6th grade. Never had the conversation with my mom. And years later, my father told me a story, and I remember that he used to gather together with other clergy, imam, rabbi, priest. He gathered them at McDonald's every Wednesday morning at 8:30 for coffee. And that started in 1981. For a very conservative Christian pastor to gather together other faith leaders was very progressive. But he just wanted to learn what they were about, what it was about. And so he was telling me the story years later. And he said after about 8 or 9 months of knowing that we all had a leader, we all had a faith, a person of, omnipotence, a God, discovered that everything was very similar. Our beliefs, the goodness. And then about 8 months after that, he said, "I think I know why all of us are together." And he said, "There are young men in hospitals dying of a disease we don't know very much about." And he said, "And it's our job, not as our individual faith, but as faith leaders, to minister to these men who've been kicked out of their homes, ostracized, and dying. And I'm wondering why he's telling me this story. Because I've been out for 5 years at this time, but he never said anything about it at all. So he said, Curtis, I started to go and visit. And the first week he went, he said none of the other clergy went with him. So he went, and he went to the station outside of the critical care unit. And they handed him a glove and a mask, gloves and mask, and everything. And he pushed it back to the nurse and he said, I don't need that. I'm protected by something much greater. And the last thing any of these gentlemen need is for them to feel like they are not loved. And my father visited those men. And I keep wondering, why is he telling me this story? And he turned to me and he said, I would pray for you every time I left the hospital, and whenever I went back home, or whenever I went back to the church, I would pray for you. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, here it comes. And then he looked at me and he said, I never once prayed that God would change you. I only prayed he would keep you safe. That moment of understanding from my father was immense. The problem was he was stuck between defending his faith and defending his son, which came to fruition just 6 months later when my mother chose to have an intervention in front of the entire family on Christmas Day. My father was in the kitchen weeping because he couldn't defend his son because they would question his faith. He suffered in silence, and it hurt him more not to defend me. And it was tough. So, moving forward, I met somebody. We were in a long-term relationship for 16 years until about 8 years ago. But in the back of my mind, I always felt I never deserved that because I wasn't what God was looking at, because that's how I was taught, that I'm not whole, that I'm not good. So that failed because I just didn't feel that's what I deserved, because it was still in the back of my mind sin. And on January 24th, 2018, I was minutes from no longer being here. And a moment of clarity changed my mind. And thank goodness. Divine intervention, whatever it was, I had a moment of clarity, and here I am. And I've been looking to have a body of faith again, a place I can be, a place that does for me what the church did for me all those years, but also loves me for me. So I had a booth at last summer's Family Pride here. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of wander into church that morning before the Family Pride Festival and see what I think. It had been 33 years since I walked through the door of a church, except for, a wedding or something like that. But a place where I wanted to try to see if I could connect again. Your greeting at the beginning of the service, I was like, cool, never heard that in one of my churches. And then we sang a hymn. I didn't know whether to run the aisles or sob. But the second verse says, hymn 478 in our Blue Chalice hymnals. Teach us, O Lord, your lessons as in our daily life. We struggle to be human and search for home and faith. Teach us to teach us to care for people, for all, not just some. To love as we find them or as they become. I did not know what to do at that moment. But inside, I felt a release of I don't know what I can describe it as, but a knowing, an understanding that, wow, I think I found my place. I knew then I knew I belonged here. And the conversations I've had and the friendships that I've developed have been so meaningful, and I'm looking so much forward to doing that. But the last couple of weeks, I've found myself doing something that really made me understand how much I belong here and how much I am a part of this family. I'm a Midwest driver. I'm very nice, and when people let me go, I wave, thank you, this. And the last week, I found myself going, thank you. I laughed so hard. I'm like, I was passing the peace. And then I cried a little because I realized what this has become in regard to a part of me. And I thank all of you. Thank you so much.
Bless you.
Amen.
Amen.